Africa, a land of inspiring landscapes and beauty, and equally unforgiving extremes, from sun-scorched cliffs to hidden underwater tombs. It draws thrill seekers from every corner of the globe. But what happens when courage crosses the line into chaos? The following stories are not legends. These are real stories. Stories of survival and loss. Stories where a split-second decision made the difference between life and legacy. I'm the Gingerbeard Man, and if you're a fan of the macabre, mysterious, or miraculous, then you've come to the right place. But before we begin, I need your help, please. The like button has gone missing. The last I heard, he was somewhere near the Okavango Delta. Now, if you know what country that is, please let me know in the comments below, so that I can speed the search up. Right, with that being said, buckle up. Let's get into today's stories. Oribi Gorge, KwaZulu-Natal, a place that hums with life and danger in equal measure. It's where raw nature and adrenaline collide. The gorge cuts deep into the landscape, 400 meters of sheer sandstone cliffs that look like something out of a forgotten time. Lush forests sprawl beneath like a green ocean, and the Mzimkhunwana River threads its way through the bottom, murmuring constantly, a soft warning. Suspended over the abyss is a narrow steel bridge that creaks underfoot and always sways just enough to keep your stomach in knots. Then there's the real beast, the wild swing, a 165-meter rope swing that launches you off the edge of the Lahore Falls into freefall before catching you in a wide, heart-stopping arc. It's one of the highest swings in the world, and it doesn't just test courage, it tests control. On most days, screams of thrill echo through the canyon. But that day, the scream that came was not a scream of fun. In 2014, Lerato Nkosi was 18 and just 4 days into a new job at the big swing at Oribi Gorge. She had spent those days strapping tourists into harnesses, calming nerves with humor, and learning safety checklists until they were second nature to her. Her mentor, Thokozani Rasta Nkube, was a local legend. He was known for his charm, his daring stunts, and the way he danced around before each jump. On the morning of Friday, February 28th, the sun was already warm by 9 a.m. It was a busy day. A family from Bloemfontein and a couple from Switzerland had already taken their jumps. Rasta was in his usual high spirits, cracking jokes to relieve the tension of the guests who still had to jump. Lerato had been triple-checking the harnesses from behind the viewing platform. Everything seemed normal for her, until a man from Cape Town froze at the edge. To help him, Rasta offered a demonstration jump, something that he had done many times before to help relieve the tension of the guests. This time, however, he wanted to try something new, something a little different, a backwards twist into the jump. Lerato, while coiling cables, felt an uneasy knot in her stomach. When she voiced her concerns, however, Rasta reassured her with a confident smile and told her not to worry and that everything was going to be okay. Eventually, Lerato smiled back. However, she had to try hard to hide her unease. Rasta stood at the edge. He winked at the man who was waiting by the viewing platform. He then gave a mock salute, after which he launched himself backwards. At first, it was perfect. His body arched into freefall, but then he drifted slightly to the left, over the rarely used secondary guard cable. Guests watched in horror as the cable began slowly slicing through the jump sling, as well as his safety backup swing. Thokozani didn't swing. He fell, straight down into the trees, gone. Tourists screamed. Lerato ran to the edge, but he was out of sight. She radioed for help, her hands trembling. Search and rescue arrived within the hour. Rasta had landed on the rocks above the 3 lines meant to keep people safe. He had died instantly. The investigation found no equipment fault, It was determined that the improvised stunt and deviation from protocol was to blame. All who witnessed the tragedy were provided with trauma counseling. Rasta's final act of showmanship had tragic consequences. Today, a memorial plaque rests just outside the jumping platform, and Lorato touches it sometimes when she walks by. For her, it is a quiet "I remember," a tribute to her mentor and her friend. We have seen how one moment of showmanship turned deadly in Oribi Gorge. Yet for some, pushing the limits feels worth the rush. At Victoria Falls, the stakes were different. The thrill was framed not by the cliffs, but by a roaring river. On the 2nd of January 2012, 21-year-old Agnes Moto was working as an assistant operator for Shearwater's Adventures at the Victoria Falls Bridge. The sky was clear and the air buzzed with anticipation. Tourists lined up for the bungee jump, the only one in the world offering a view of the cascading falls and the crocodile-infested Zambezi below. Amongst the crowd that morning was a young Australian woman. She must have been 22 years old. She was full of energy as well as nerves. She joked with friends about dying for the Instagram shot. Then she stepped up onto the platform. Her harness was secured. The bungee cord was checked. It looked pristine. And the team ran through the usual countdown. 3, 2, 1, jump! She dove gracefully. And for a moment, all seemed to be perfect. The cord extended. But then the unthinkable happened. It snapped, far higher than any failure point should occur. The sound cracked through the air as she plummeted 111 meters into the Zambezi River below. Tourists gasped, and Agnes radioed for help as others watched in stunned silence. Miraculously, the woman surfaced, coughing and bleeding, battered and bruised, but to everyone's surprise and amazement, alive. The rescue team reached her within minutes, and she was carefully pulled out of the water and put onto a rescue boat. She had only suffered broken ribs and deep bruises. It was a miracle that she had survived. Investigations found a rare manufacturing defect in the cord, prompting an immediate global recall. The company itself was stunned. This was its first major incident in over 150,000 bungee jumps. After the incident, it reinforced protocols as well as safety inspections. The woman's survival made headlines. She called it her miracle. However, for Agnes, that moment became a haunting memory, a stark reminder of how close thrill can be to tragedy. Agnes's story ends in shock and survival. Her jumper lived, but barely. At the Blue Hole in Egypt, however, the depths claimed the diver without return. From showmanship gone wrong to a survival miracle, now we dive into darkness as we plunge into our final story. On April 28, 2000, at around 10:20 a.m., Amal Hassan, a dive inspector in Dahab, was overseeing a group of early morning divers. The weather was calm, the Red Sea's waters were crystal clear. One man, however, stood out, Yuri Lipski, a 22-year-old Russian-Israeli instructor. He announced that he'd be attempting a bounce dive to the Ark. This was a risky descent, far beyond recreational limits. Amal and her team, including senior diver Tarak Omar, warned him. He needed weeks of training, not a single tank and helmet. However, Yuri insisted. They watched him load heavy weights and descend into the depths below. At first, everything was fine, until radio contact dropped. Then, silence. Tarek dove down and found Yuri's body at 115 meters, face down with his regulator out. The camera was still recording, showing Yuri fighting for control, removing his regulator and trying to inflate his buoyancy. But narcosis had already set in. His training had failed him in the haze and pressure and fear. The body and footage were recovered. Yuri never resurfaced alive. The footage spread among diving communities worldwide as a chilling warning. Memorial plaques were installed along the sides, and the dive shop temporarily closed and conducted grief sessions. Amal still thinks about that day when she lowers divers towards the ark. How inviting the calm waters appear, and how deceiving the depths can be. Sadly, Yuri was not the first life the ark would claim, and it would not be its last. The last known death was recorded in 2017, and it is regarded as many as the most dangerous dive in the world. The death toll is estimated to be between 130 to 200 people. It is even known as the diver's graveyard to some people. These are real incidents told through voices that saw them unfold. They remind us that extreme sports don't just test adrenaline, they test respect. Respect for gear, respect for the environment, respect for training, and respect for the unpredictable. If there's a takeaway, it's this. Spectacle without discipline can turn tragic. In the wild moments before freedom and fall, the margin is slim and demands awareness. Thank you for joining me on today's journey. If you found these stories compelling or inspiring, please like, subscribe, and don't forget to let me know in the comments below if you've been able to find the like button. Stay safe, stay curious. God bless.